Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the last video in my series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Commander deck techs. I've released a new TMNT Commander deck every Thursday through now when Secrets of Strixhaven is about to drop, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. If you want to see the Ninja Turtles decks I cooked up, take a look at the playlist linked in the video's description. As you see, today our commander is Bebop and Rocksteady, the mutant warthog and rhinoceros minions of Shredder. Like the rest of the Turtles characters, their backstories vary, but they're generally presented as a pair of dim-witted street gangers who were transformed into their anthropomorphic forms by Shredder because he needed some mutant thugs. Shredder did. The guy who commands an army of martial artists. He needed these two. I guess sometimes when all you have is the combined prowess of an entire ninja clan at your disposal, everything looks like a nail, so you decide you need a couple of hammers. Luckily for him, Bebop and Rocksteady are exactly that blunt. I'm excited to show you what I put together for this pair, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I put it at the head of my deck. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Bebop and Rocksteady is a 7/5 legendary boar rhino mutant, a boar, a rhino, and they're both mutants, for 1 and double hybrid Golgari mana, so we can either cast this for 1 and double black, 1 and double green, or 1 a black and a green. And it says, whenever Bebop and Rocksteady attack or block, sacrifice a permanent unless you discard a card. So, if you're new to Magic, welcome! I'm going to go over the ideas this deck is built around, both in terms of the mechanics and the way it plays at the table. Then I'll go through each card individually and talk about how it works and why it helps our plan. If you have questions, post them in the comments. Okay, look, Bebop and Rocksteady are comic relief. Whether they're gangsters or goons, they're meant to be dumb muscle that should be able to handle Shredder's orders, but are easily stymied by anyone who can outrun, outplan, or outwit them. They are a narrative obstacle for the sake of themselves, annoying their boss with the same incompetence that makes their powerful physicality a nominal threat at best. And that's why they're great. These are exactly the kind of Saturday morning cartoon bad guys for a show like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're big enough to seem dangerous while being tough enough that knocking them around shows us that crime doesn't pay while not really getting anyone seriously hurt. Meanwhile, they're brash and arrogant and thick-headed, and we cheer when we see them because we know what's coming. A fun fight that the heroes will win because these two mooks deserve to lose. That's the kind of fight this deck is designed to give you. By turn 3, our commander comes out ready to do damage, collateral and otherwise. In fact, their only ability makes certain of that, since we're forced to lose our permanents or our cards in hand whenever we swing with them. Still, like Shredder, we have to take into account just how much potential mayhem that they can cause and admit that it's worth losing those resources when we send in these clowns. So our deck is built on 2 ideas. The first is that our commander is way overcosted for its stats, so we need to give these two plenty of things to smash their way through on the way to our opponent's life totals. For that reason, we have all manner of fodder, artifacts and creatures that reward us for sacrificing them, cards that can return themselves or each other from the graveyard so that we sack them again, and, of course, a whole lot of token generating effects to give us endless fuel for the fire. The second idea is that no matter how tough Bebop and Rocksteady are on their own, they're lackeys, not leaders. So we have a cohort of other burly brutes to help them rampage their way across our opponent's boards. We throw in some sources of evasion, a bunch of ways to pump up our team, and a handful of cards that care about just how large our lunkheads are, and we've got ourselves enough grade A beef to maybe get dinner on the table. As befits our commander, our game plan is simple. We get them on the field and swing in, developing our board with value pieces while Bebop and Rocksteady keep our aggro going. We add to their team with big beaters and lots of little tokens until we overwhelm our opponents. Sometimes we win with commander damage, while other times we go wide and tall to pressure our fellow players until they relent. And win or lose, we'll be back next episode with more hard-hitting, fast and loose, vaguely coordinated attacks that'll surely smash those turtles this time, right? For us, it's just another round of Hench warfare. You'll enjoy this deck if you like mixing classic creature combat with some fun aristocrats action on the side, or if you like reminding your opponents that no amount of planning or strategy can truly account for a pair of unpredictable underlings. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section full of cards that I considered putting in the deck, but which ultimately didn't make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done and you want to do just more of it, I've got that there. Or if you like one of the ways I've gone with it and you want to emphasize it over, the other, then that considering section is a great place to start when you build your own Bebop and Rocksteady deck. So, we're going to get started with the second of the two strategies that I mentioned, our Brutes. These are all cards that, while they do lots of things for us, are meant to be here to serve a role in combat, to attack, to block, and so forth. We're going to start with Topiary Stomper. Big Stomps. I love this guy. This is 2 and double green for a 4/4 plant dinosaur with vigilance that when it enters, we get to search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. This is Rampant Growth. So this is Rampant Growth for a single extra green, and it comes with a 4/4 vigilant body that can't attack or block until we control 7 or more lands. Luckily, we have plenty of ramp in this deck, much of which is land-based, and Big Stomps is here to do work for us even before we can attack and block with him, because we have so many cards that care about us having creatures with high power, power 4 or greater. So Topiary Stomper is here to help us late game, here to help us early game, works for us great. Love Big Stomps. Next is Elegy Acolyte, a little bit of a pet card of mine lately. This is 2 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric from Edge of Eternities. It has lifelink, and it says whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card and we lose a life. Great, we're here to do combat damage to players. So getting rewarded for doing what we're going to do anyway with a card, and it costs us 1 life and that's it, sounds great. We can always attack with the Acolyte as well, or block with it if we want, and gain that life right back. In addition, Elegy Acolyte has a Void ability. At the beginning of our end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, we don't have any warp effects here, so it's really just sort of a revolt type thing, we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So if we did the thing that our commander's going to do, causing us to sacrifice something when they attack, we're going to get something we can sacrifice next turn. And that something is still a non-land permanent, so that's going to trigger Void again on the following turn. If we want, we can just continually eat these robots every time Bebop and Rocksteady rumble in, and hopefully draw some cards in the process. I'm pretty sure they've beaten up some robots in the cartoon, so yeah. Next is an actual Turtles card. This is Lord Dreg, Insect Invader. 3 and a black for a 3/2 flying legendary insect warrior with a Disappear ability. Disappear is sort of the latest iteration on Revolt, kind of. At the beginning of our end step, if a permanent left the battlefield under our control this turn, we make a 1/1 black insect warrior creature token with flying. So, similar to what we just talked about with Elegy Acolyte, this is going to trigger, or be triggered rather, by, it'll qualify for the trigger with our commander, and then we'll make this 1/1 flyer, which we can then eat next turn when we attack with our commander, and then make another flyer, so we can keep the train going. Or we can pay 3 and a green, and sacrifice a token to draw a card. We've got lots of tokens in this deck. It does not have to be the same insect warrior. It doesn't even have to be a creature token. So a little expensive for us, but if we need a mana sink and we're just hurting for cards, we've usually got plenty of tokens on the battlefield so that we can sacrifice those, trade them in for cards, and that does trigger Lord Dreg, or qualify for that Disappear trigger, so that at the end step we're going to get our 1/1 flyer. Next up is the Earth King from the Avatar: The Last Airbender set. 3 and a green for a 2/2 legendary human noble ally. So a 2/2 is not much of a brute, but when he enters, we make Bosco. It's a 4/4 green bear creature token. That's a 4/4. Pretty good. Just a 4/4 vanilla is already an okay beater for us, and it's a nice brute. So that's why the Earth King fits in this category. But he's really here to be an acceleration piece for us, because whenever one or more creatures we control with power 4 or greater attack, including Bosco himself, we search our library for up to that many basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So every time we attack with a creature that is ferocious, that has power 4 or greater, we get to rampant growth for the same number of lands as we had ferocious creatures attack. So the Earth King is going to give us a free rampant growth effect, if for no other reason than whenever we attack with Bebop and Rocksteady. So this can really get out of hand over time. Like, it doesn't seem like it's doing that much for us, just finding us basics, but imagine being at, 4 mana on turn 4. We played Bebop and Rocksteady on our last turn, we played the Earth King this turn. Now, we attack with Bebop and Rocksteady, we either eat another token or some other kind of permanent that we got into play on turn 1 or 2, or we just have Bebop and Rocksteady eat Bosco. That's fine. The Earth King sticks around, Bebop and Rocksteady attack, and we get to Rampant Growth. Next turn, if we make our land drop, we're a turn ahead. And hopefully we're able to attack with more things. If we didn't eat Bosco, we can attack with Bebop and Rocksteady, and now we've got 2 more lands in play, and so we're multiple turns ahead. Anyway, it can just be great for us, and it continues to be good over the course of the game with our big creatures. Normally, you don't think about deck thinning being a deal in Commander, but I would argue that with a long enough game, the Earth King can pull about 20% of our library out of our library and get it onto the battlefield as mana, so that we're able to then cast our spells and hopefully cast some draw effects to cast more spells. Anyway, a little bit of magical Christmas land, but love the Earth King. I think he's great in this deck. Next up is Bebop. Just Bebop on his own. Bebop Warthog Warrior. 4 and a black for a 5/4 legendary Boar Mutant Warrior with Menace that gives all of our Rhinos Menace. So that includes our commander, because our commander is a Boar and a Rhino. So this Bebop and our commander both have Menace, since we got Menace here, and all of our Rhinos have Menace. So a little bit of evasion on a 5/4 body. That's okay. It also swamp cycles for 2 generic mana, meaning while it's in our hand, if we don't want to cast Bebop, we can pay 2 and discard it to search for a swamp, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle. So that's pretty solid, but it's worth noting that it does not say a basic swamp. We have a couple of dual-typed lands in this deck, and if you want to upgrade your mana base, you could certainly put more in. So we can find a swamp with Bebop by swamp cycling him, and actually get access to more green mana from it, since it's going to be a swamp forest that we would find if we're able to. So yeah, Bebop is pretty solid. Next is Mazarek, Crawl Death Priest from Ravnica. This version is printed in Edge of Eternities, but Mazarek is from where originally? I guess Commander 2015. But anyway, Mazarek is a creature from Ravnica. The Crawler on Ravnica. Mazarek was part of the Golgari Swarm. Yeah, he's an important guy. For 3, a black and a green, we get a 2/2 legendary Insect Shaman. So a 2/2 for 5 is not that great, and it doesn't even come with a token. However, whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, we put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. So Mazarek quickly becomes pretty big. Every turn, we're likely to be sacrificing something with Bebop and Rocksteady. I should make it clear, most of the time with our commander, we want to sacrifice something. And it is possible to sacrifice land if we need to, but if there's nothing for us to sacrifice, we can always discard a card. That's totally fine for us as well. And we have a little bit we have a few payoffs for that as well. But mostly we're built around sacrificing our stuff, and Mazarek rewards us for that by putting a counter on each of our creatures, including himself. Next is Scion of Calamity. This is 3 and double green for a 5/5 dinosaur with Myriad. Myriad means when we attack with the Scion of Calamity, if we're attacking, let's say, opponent A, and we've got 3 opponents, what we will do is we will make a tapped and attacking copy of Scion of Calamity, and for each of our other opponents. And each of those copies is attacking that opponent or one of their planeswalkers. So if we have 3 opponents, we attack one of them with a Scion of Calamity, and we suddenly have 3 5/5 dinosaurs, each attacking a different opponent or planeswalker they control. And then at the end of combat, we exile those tokens. That's fine. But we don't want to exile these tokens. What we want to do is stack the triggers properly. Let's say Scion of Calamity and Bebop and Rocksteady are both in play. We attack with them both, and now we have 2 different attack triggers. We have Scion of Calamity's trigger resolve first, and we make these myriad copies of it, however many copies we make because of how many opponents we have. So let's say we're attacking opponent A with the Scion of Calamity and opponent B with Bebop and Rocksteady. What we will do is make an extra copy of Scion of Calamity attacking opponent B and attacking opponent C. Then we let Bebop and Rocksteady's attack trigger resolve, and we sacrifice the Scion of Calamity Myriad token that was attacking opponent B, so that we still have a creature attacking each opponent, but we got rid of that token that we didn't need. So that way, we've been able to sacrifice a token that wasn't even on the battlefield before we attacked, and we're still able to attack with our commander and still get at least one bonus Scion of Calamity. And it's great that we have them, because whenever a Scion of Calamity, the original or one of the myriad copies, deals combat damage to a player, we get to destroy an artifact or enchantment that player controls. So we get to sort of chomp right through one of their artifacts or enchantments and get a free naturalize. Pretty good. So this is a sweet way that if we are willing to attack with the Scion as well as our commander, we're always going to have a token to sacrifice to our commander, rather than something that was already on the battlefield for us that we may not want to lose. Next up is Shredder Shadowmaster. He's good in this deck, but I wanted to put him in here particularly because I really don't think Bebop and Rocksteady can operate on their own. So I think flavorfully, they need to have their boss looking over their shoulder. Shredder is 3 and double black for a 5/5 legendary human ninja with basically Myriad. Whenever he attacks a player, for each other opponent, we make a token that's a copy of Shredder tapped and attacking that player, not one of their planeswalkers, just the player, except those tokens aren't legendary, and then we sacrifice them at the end of combat. This is different than Myriad. Myriad tokens get exiled at the end of combat, so this will trigger things like Mazarek that care about us sacrificing permanents. And Shredder, of course, makes the copies of himself non-legendary, which Myriad does not do, and it forces us to attack players with it. So it's not quite the same as Myriad, but it sure plays in the same space. So Shredder is a 5/5 for 5 that attacks everyone. And when he does combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. Meaning they don't end up with the rounded up amount, they lose the rounded up amount. Sweet. Love Shredder. So we can do the same thing with him that we would do with our Scion of Calamity, attacking with Shredder, making a copy, eating it with Bebop and Rocksteady because we stacked the trigger in such a way. You get it. Next up is Ground Chuck and Dirtbag. Card I've put in several decks since it's been released because it's just good. 4 and double green for an 8/8 legendary Oxmole mutant being relevant, which we'll see later in our land base. It has trample, and whenever we tap a land for mana, we also add a green. So Ground Chuck and Dirtbag gives us the ability to have all of our lands suddenly tap for twice as much as they were tapping for, and is an 8/8 trample on top of that. What else is there to say? We also have Michelangelo on the scene, because this is the villains deck, but we need one of the heroes in here as well, and Michelangelo is a good one. 4 and double green for a 2/2 legendary Mutant Ninja Turtle with trample. That comes in with a number of 1/1 counters on him for each equal to the number of lands that we control. So in all likelihood, Michelangelo is going to come in as an 8/8 for 6 with trample, just like Ground Chuck and Dirtbag, because we'll likely have 6 lands in play, so 6 plus 2 is 8. And when Michelangelo dies, we return this card to our hand. This is the reason Michelangelo is really in this deck, because it's nice to have a big 8/8 or just sort of French vanilla creature, like a big giant trampler. That's pretty good for us. But when Michelangelo dies, we get to put him back in our hand and cast him again. And maybe now we have more lands in play, so he comes in even bigger than he was before. He comes in always with a power and toughness equal to 2 plus the number of lands we control. So it's fine if we want to just eat Michelangelo with Bebop and Rocksteady's ability. If we need to, he can die while attacking or while not attacking. He's not going to be able to do damage if he dies before it, obviously, but we're able to use him as sacrifice fodder and then bring him back over and over. Pretty good. I like a card that regrows itself. Old One Eye is next. Doesn't regrow itself, but can be regrown. For 5 and a green, we get a 6/6 legendary Tyrannid with trample that gives all of our other creatures trample. So this is another great way to give our commander an evasive ability so that we can swing in for, 7 damage, and even if we're blocked, we are probably going to be able to do some commander damage to our opponent. Old One Eye also comes in with a 5/5 green Tyrannid creature token. Tyrannids are from Warhammer 40k, obviously, that's where this card is from. So for 6 mana, we get a 6/6 trample and a 5/5 trample. As long as Old One Eye's in play, the token also has trample. That has fast healing. At the beginning of our first main phase, we may discard 2 cards, and if we do, we return this card from our graveyard to our hand. So we can regrow Old One Eye get it back into play, give our stuff trample again, and also, when we recast it, it's going to make another 5/5 Tyrannid. So these Tyrannids are great for us to eat. We can eat Old One-Eye if we want to, and still bring him back. Probably don't want to eat Old One-Eye if he's the only source of evasion that our commander is getting, but sometimes you don't have the option. So we saw this Bebop earlier. We have a matched version of it, sort of, in Rocksteady Crash Courser. This is 4 and double green for a 7/7 legendary Rhino mutant, again, a mutant, that says it can't be blocked by more than one creature, and boars we control can't be blocked by more than one creature. I know what you're thinking. Can't be blocked by more than one creature is sort of like anti-menace, which is what Bebop gives rhinos, and Rocksteady gives boars. So if they're both in play, neither can be blocked, because menace says they have to be blocked by more than one creature, but they also, thanks to Rocksteady, can't be blocked by more than one creature. So both in play at the same time means they are unblockable. And so is our commander, because our commander is a rhino and is a boar. So yeah, having both of these in play doesn't just mean we've got 12 power of unblockable damage in play, we've also got the 7 power of our commander, or whatever everything has pumped us up to. So yeah, if we can get both of these in, that's great. And just like Bebop, Rocksteady has a land cycling ability, although it is forest cycling, and we can use it in the same way we might have used the one for Bebop. Next up is Thunderfoot Baloth. This is 4 and double green for a 5/5 beast with trample and lieutenant. As long as we control our commander, this creature gets +2/+2, and other creatures we control get +2/+2 and have trample. So as long as Bebop and Rocksteady are in play, that is to say our commander, of course, then all of our creatures have trample, and all of our creatures, including Thunderfoot Baloth and our commander, are getting +2/+2. So this becomes a 7/7 trample, and our commander becomes a 9/7 trample. So a very nice way to, I mean, we're going to be playing with our commander anyway, and we kind of don't care if Bebop and Rocksteady die once or twice, because they only cost 3 mana, so it's easy to replay them even from the command zone. Yeah, Thunderfoot Baloth can really help us out. Beledros Witherbloom. If you're ready to go back to Strixhaven, we're about to at time of recording, so I'm pretty excited about that. But we've got Beledros, the original Witherbloom Elder Dragon, here to help us out. For 5, a black and a green, we get a 4/4 legendary Elder Dragon with flying that says at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this token dies, you gain 1 life. Little pesties can be really helpful to us. They're great for us to sacrifice to our commander. They're great for us to chump block with if we need to. Yeah, love the pests. And notably, it does not say at the beginning of your upkeep. It says at the beginning of each upkeep, meaning every opponent's upkeep, Beledroth is going to make us a new token. So we're going to get 4 pests every turn cycle, assuming 3 opponents, of course, which gives us just unlimited sack fodder. So we've got a couple of creatures that do this kind of thing, and it's just nice to be able to see it. In addition, we can pay 10 life and untap all of our lands, but only once each turn, which is bonkers. You know, you play Beledros when we get up to 7 mana, immediately spend a quarter of our life in order to cast more spells that same turn. This can really be a powerful effect. It seems like it's dangerous, and it is, but it's totally fine because it's accelerating us. It's giving us a free, would you pay 10 life for 7 more mana? Would you pay 10 life for more than that? Because we might be using this on a later turn. What if we have Ground Chuck and Dirtbag in play? Our 7 mana is now 14 mana. And if we didn't spend that all here, then that's 18 mana maybe that we're spending. 18? Am I losing my mind? Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But the point is, this is a powerful ability that if you're willing to spend the life, and you ought to be, sometimes it can really accelerate you in a powerful way. And we don't have to worry about getting that life back because, again, we're getting 4 pesties every turn cycle, and when they die, we're going to gain that life back. Surely we won't lose that life in other ways, right? Next up is Leatherhead Iron Gator. 5 and double green for a 5/5 legendary Crocodile Mutant Rogue. Mutant again, still relevant. With trample and haste, and when she attacks, we put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature we control, which means her as well. So we get to have her attack as a 7 mana 7/7 trampling creature. With haste, we can do it right away. This pumps up our commander, pumps up everything, turns all those little pests we had into 3/3s, and now they're dangerous. Yeah, love Leatherhead in this deck. She's really just a powerful brute, so fits into our brutes. Spearbreaker Behemoth is next. This is 5 and double green for a 5/5 beast with indestructible that can give a creature power 5 or greater indestructible until end of turn for just a single generic mana. So this is here to be a great blocker, to be a great attacker for us, and to protect our commander and our other giant creatures, of which we have many. Finally, we have Ghalta Primal Hunger, because why wouldn't you play the biggest dinosaur? This is 10 and double green for a 12/12, so 12 mana for a 12/12 legendary elder dinosaur that costs an amount of generic mana less to cast equal to the total power of creatures we control. So if our commander is in play on turn 3, Ghalta is immediately discounted to a 5 mana creature because it's subtracting 10 or 7 from this 10. If we want to play Ghalta on turn 5 by getting Bebop and Rocksteady out turn 3 and then getting basically any other creature with at least power 3 on turn 4, then turn 5 Ghalta is a 2 mana 12/12 trampler. Amazing. Just all it takes is big stats and some built-in evasion, and this cost reduction just makes Ghalta always dangerous and always intimidating at the table, which is important because if people are trying to deal with Ghalta, they're not trying to deal with our commander. Unless they're using a board wipe, they're using spot removal, which means Ghalta is a little bit of a removal magnet, so that removal's not getting used on stuff we might rather our opponents leave alone. Yeah, pretty good. That is our Brutes section, and now we're going to go to the biggest section in our deck. This is our Fodder section. These are all cards that exist to either be sacrificed to give us value or to give us at least something back when we sacrifice them, or to make things that we can sacrifice. For example, Rancor. Rancor is a single green for an aura that enchants a creature and gives it +2/+0 and trample. We want to put this on our commander, make ourselves a 9/5 trampling commander. That sounds great. And when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we return it to our hand. So Rancor is not really in this deck intended to be something we can sacrifice, or that we ought to sacrifice, but we sure can. If there's nothing else in play that we are willing to lose, Rancor only cost us a single green, and it's going to go right back to our hand after it hits the graveyard when we sacrifice it. So we can lose its benefit in order to be able to attack at all. If we're able to sacrifice something else, then Rancor is just helping us out and sitting there. But being able to use it as sacrifice fodder and just recur it immediately on its own, like this self-regrowth that we were talking about earlier, really great. Bloodghast is next. Gotta run Bloodghast. Double black for a 2/1 vampire spirit that can't block, but it has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life. Not usually that relevant for us, but it could be. And it has a landfall ability. Whenever a land we control enters, we can return this from our graveyard to the battlefield. Doesn't come in tapped because it can't block anyway. But if we play this, we've got it in play to sacrifice to our commander, and then either post-combat, we can play a land and have it come right back, or pre-combat on our next turn, we play a land, Bloodghast comes in, and it's ready for us to sack again to our commander, just limitlessly. Ichor Wellspring is next. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact, and when it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we draw a card. So this comes in, it replaces itself immediately, we sacrifice it to our commander, it replaces itself again. Great. Similarly is Mycosynth Wellspring. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that does exactly the same thing, except rather than drawing us a card when it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead it Lay of the Lands us. It lets us search for a basic land, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle. So we're not rampant growthing with this, we're just drawing a card, even though it's not the draw action, but we are drawing a basic land every time, so we're hitting our land drops for sure. Pretty good. Servo Schematic is sort of rounding out the cycle of these 3. For 2 generic mana, we get an artifact that says whenever it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we make a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So yeah, it's 3 different sack fodder for our commander. It comes in, makes a servo, we can sacrifice that, Next turn, we sacrifice the schematic, make another servo. Third turn, we can sacrifice the servo. Or even better, we sacrifice the schematic first, and then we've got 2 little servos hanging out that we can either use for blocking, or we can sacrifice them to our commander. Pretty good. Chittering Dispatcher is next. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Devoid normally isn't relevant, but in case it is, this card, even though it seems like it should be green, has this ability and so is of no color. So if an opponent says, haha, I want to counter that because it's a green spell, because I have a counter spell that only works on, I don't know, green and red cards, and we can say, sorry, you can't counter it, it's Devoid. And that Devoid ability, it functions in all zones, so it would work for counter spells. Yeah, not usually relevant, but who knows. And then it has Myriad, which we've already seen. Great for us to be able to make multiple different token copies of this in order to sacrifice them to Bebop and Rocksteady if we stack the triggers right. And it says when this creature leaves the battlefield, we make a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sack this token, and you get a colorless mana. So what's nice is, the Chittering Dispatcher, the idea behind it is you attack with it, it makes these Myriad tokens. When the Myriad tokens are exiled after combat, or when they die during combat, they will leave the battlefield and leave behind an Eldrazi spawn, which we can use for ramp purposes, or just to sacrifice to our commander, or to block with, whatever we want. Remember, these Eldrazi spawn do not require us to tap them to make the colorless mana, so we can sacrifice them at any time, even when they're tapped. The Dispatcher, if we want to eat it, we sure can, and it will leave behind this spawn of its own. But what we hope to do is be able to attack with it, get the Myriad triggers, and whether those Myriad copies die or not, they're going to get exiled at the end of combat, and we'll get these Eldrazi spawn. Yeah, a sweet card to use. Next up is Chomping Changeling from the recent Lorwyn Eclipsed set. 2 and a green for a 1/2 Shapeshifter with Changeling, and when this creature enters, we destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So it's a Reclamation Sage. It's a built-in Naturalize on it. But I want to call your attention to the fact that it's a Changeling. I mentioned before that we care about mutants, which we'll see in our land base, but we also have seen Bebop and Rocksteady, not our commander, but the individual cards, which give boars and rhinos different evasive abilities. Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, or they have menace. The Changeling ability means Chomping Changeling is all creature types. So this is a boar and a rhino, so it's going to be able to get those evasive abilities if we need it to. Not usually that important on a 1/2 body, but you never know how we're going to be pumping this up. However, it's also fine to look at this as 3 mana gives us a Naturalize effect, and then a card we can sacrifice, or a creature we can sacrifice to our commander. Pretty good too. Heaped Harvest, love this card. From Bloomburrow, this is 2 and a green for an artifact food that has the food text. For 2 tap and sack, we can gain 3 life. But we can also look at this other ability when it enters and when we sacrifice it. It doesn't necessarily say to this effect, but sacrifice it to our commander maybe. We get to Rampant Growth. Search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So Heaped Harvest can come in on turn 4, let's say. Maybe turn 3 we've played our commander. Turn 4 we attack with our commander after playing Heaped Harvest. So it came in, we Rampant Growthed, we sacrifice it to our commander, we Rampant Growth again. Now it's turn 4, and we've got, assuming we made our land drop on turn 4, we've got 6 lands in play. And we got to attack with our 7/5 commander. Great. Next up, we have Ninja Pizza. Ninja Pizza is a new Turtles card, obviously, from the Turtles commander deck. It's 2 and a green for an enchantment that gives all of our foods the ability for us to tap them and sack them to add 1 mana of any color. Basically, it means that foods are a treasure. They don't have the treasure type, but pretty good. And we have different ways we can use that, including Heaped Harvest is a food. So with Ninja Pizza in play, we could, if we want, sacrifice Heaped Harvest to the ability that Ninja Pizza gives it in order to make a mana, and then we've sacrificed it so it triggers its own ability and Rampant Growths us as well. Sweet. However, it also says at the beginning of our second main phase we make a food. Sweet. This is sort of like a little tiny bit of ramp for us, as long as Ninja Pizza stays on the battlefield, that we don't get until the start of our second main phase, which is post-combat obviously, but we are getting them, and we can use them either to gain life or as treasures to make mana. or we can sacrifice them to our commander. So this is another one of our repeated make a token or make a bit of sacrifice fodder for us cards. It actually combos quite well with Peregrine Took. This is a 2/3 legendary halfling citizen for 2 and a green that says if one or more tokens would be created under our control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. This is, I believe, our only replacement effect, so we don't have to worry about interactions. It just means every time we would make a token, also make a food. Were you going to make a food? Make an extra food as well. So yeah, bonus foods every time we make tokens seems pretty great. And we can sacrifice those to gain life or to our commander whenever we attack with it, of course. Or we can sacrifice 3 foods, which we might be getting either from Pippin himself, from having the Heaped Harvest in play, from getting them out with Ninja Pizza, whatever it may be. Any 3 foods, they don't have to be tokens. If we sack them, we draw a card. So Pippin can give us some card draw, but it's mostly here just to make us extra food. Delicious. Next, I know you're afraid of it, it's the Scoot Swarm. This is 2 and a green for a 1/1 insect with landfall. It says whenever a land we control enters, we make a 1/1 green insect creature token. That's fine. But if we control 6 or more lands, so if we were making our 6th land drop, and of course we haven't lost any lands, or a later one, instead of that 1/1 insect, we make a Scoot Swarm copy, which has the same text. So Scoot Swarm can absolutely get out of hand. We get this out on turn 6, or maybe earlier if we've ramped our lands, or we get this out earlier and just make those insects so we can eat. And then once the Scoots are making more Scoots, we're going to make even more Scoots, and even more Scoots. There are always more Scoot bugs. So an endless amount of attackers that maybe we can pump up, blockers that we can maybe pump up, of course, and obviously it doesn't matter if we're eating some Scoots, we're going to make more of them, so we can eat them with our commander when we attack with them. Next is Tainted Treats. This is a removal spell from the Ninja Turtles set. For 1, a black and a green, we get an instant that destroys an artifact or creature, and if its mana value is 4 or less, we make a food token. So this is Putrefy, but it doesn't care about regeneration. It just cares about the mana value of what we killed. So we can get rid of something big on its own without having to worry about getting a food token. And if we have to use Tainted Treats to get rid of something small, like a commander that's mana value 4 or less, a lot of them are, we get a food in addition so that we can then just straight up attack with our commander right away. Next is Tireless Provisioner. This is another landfall effect. 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf scout with landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we make either a food token or a treasure token. Great. If we have Ninja Pizza in play, we can just make foods, and they are treasure tokens, basically. They don't have the treasure type, but they have the same text as a treasure token. So this is a great way to make tokens for us to help. If we need food, we can make food, because we have food payoffs like the Ninja Pizza card that we just saw, or like Pippin. But if we don't have those in play, we just make treasures, and we can either sacrifice them for mana or to our commander in order to attack. Arasta of the Endless Web is next. Love this card, originally from Theros Beyond Death. 2 and double green for a 3/5 legendary enchantment creature, Spider, with reach. That says whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, we make a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. So we get little spiders that are good blockers for us, but we can also just sacrifice them to our commander in order to attack, and that seems pretty good too. This is a little reliant on our opponents having some interactive or, otherwise non-permanent spells, but we see that all the time. Maybe someone's playing a Cultivate. Maybe somebody's playing some kind of, if someone's playing Doubling Season. Sure would like to have that in this deck, but we don't need it. Arasta's going to help us out. A Doubling Season is crazy. Why did I say that? It's not an instant or sorcery. Maybe someone's playing Cultivate. Maybe someone's playing Second Harvest. There we go. That's a little closer. Anyway, we've got Brightcap Badger next. This is a 3/4 Badger Druid that gives each fungus and sapperling we control tap to add a green. And at the end of our turn, at our end step, we make a 1/1 green sapperling. So we're making little 1/1 creatures that, as long as we've got the Badger in play, we can tap them for green, so they're like little Llanowar elves, kind of. We can also sacrifice them to our commander if we want to. However, Brightcap Badger has an adventure as well. If you haven't seen adventures before, the way this works is this is a creature, or in your hand, we can cast this Fungus Frolic instant, if we like, And if we do, we exile the card and we can cast the Badger later. It doesn't have to even be a later turn. So we can either start with the Adventure and then get the Badger, or we can just have the Badger. But once the Badger's in play, we cannot then cast Fungus Frolic from it. It's just, we've got to send it on the Adventure first before we get it, and if we just want to get it, then we don't get the Adventure, and that's okay. Fungus Frolic is 2 and a green for an instant that makes 2 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens. So solid for us to do a little early on. Maybe we get out our commander on turn 3. On turn 4, we cast Fungus Frolic to make a Saproling and make a second Saproling to sacrifice. Then on turn 5, we play out the Brightcap Badger, and we still have that Saproling that was left over from last turn that we can tap for green mana right away, knowing that we're going to be replacing it at the end step. We can tap it for green mana, sacrifice it to our commander, and use that green mana plus whatever other mana we didn't use to cast Brightcap Badger on something else. Next we have Cryptcaller Chariot. This is one of, it might be the only one, but I think it's one of 2 cards in this deck that care about us discarding. So for 3 and a black, we get a 5/5 vehicle with Crew 2 and Menace. And it says whenever we discard one or more cards, we create that many tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So Cryptcaller Chariot does make us play a little differently. At this point, we might say, well, we're drawing enough lands to attack with our commander, we're just going to discard a land rather than sacrificing something in play. And then when we do that, we end up getting something we can sacrifice the next turn. So we can sort of take a turn off every other turn if we're not finding our fodder to make fodder with a Cryptcaller Chariot and then sacrifice, or discard rather, other things to keep making more and more zombies. We have a couple of different ways to take advantage of that, and we do have some recursion in this deck. So sometimes if it looks like, oh, I'm not going to be able to get to my big expensive creature, I don't want to throw it away, well, we might draw one of our recursion effects to be able to bring it back. But it's better to be able to attack with our commander than just wait a couple of turns hoping we get the mana to cast something big. And Cryptcaller Chariot gives us the ability to not sacrifice something in play if we want to keep everything, but rather throw something away and then end up with some fodder we can sacrifice, especially because that zombie comes in tapped. We've seen Elegy Acolyte. It makes us these robot tokens, and that's why it's in the fodder section. Next we have Invasion of Innistrad. This is a battle, a siege. If you haven't seen sieges before, the way this works is it comes in, we cast it for 2 and double black, and it comes in with 5 defense counters on it. And as it comes in, we choose an opponent to protect it. One of our opponents, let's say it's opponent A, is protecting Invasion of Innistrad. Now everyone else at the table can attack Invasion of Innistrad instead of attacking an opponent, and opponent A can block as though we were attacking their planeswalker or them, if they want us not to defeat Evasion of Innistrad. Other players can defeat it if they want to, but it only gives us a benefit. It will lose defense counters for every point of damage it takes, and once it has lost all of them, we will exile it, and we can cast it transformed as its backside, which is this enchantment, Deluge of the Dead. Notably, Invasion of Innistrad comes in, it's 4 mana, but it has Flash. And when it enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -13/-13 until end of turn. This can kill most anything, even things with indestructible. So a pretty sweet way of being a removal spell. And then it's easy to defeat this because our commander is a 7/5. So our opponents are probably like, wait, you're not attacking me, you're attacking the battle? Yeah, have at it. I don't care if you defeat that. Which is a mistake, because we can then cast Deluge of the Dead. It will enter and make us 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. These are not tapped. And it gives us a mana sink. For 2 and a black, we can exile a card from a graveyard, and if it was a creature card, we make a 2/2 zombie creature token. Again, not tapped. So this is a way for us to shut down graveyard strategies or stop our opponents from bringing things back from the dead. If somebody decides, hey, my commander died, I'm going to put it in my graveyard because secretly I have a way to get it back. Then they cast their spell to get it back, and while they're targeting it, we spend 2 and a black to exile it from the graveyard, not just costing them their reanimation spell, but also making it so they have to put their commander back in their command zone, so they do have to pay the commander tax they didn't think they were going to have to pay, and it's after they've already spent the mana for their reanimation spell, so maybe they can't do it this turn. Yeah, Deluge of the Dead Pretty nice way to eat things out of graveyards, and at the very least, we can just keep our opponent's graveyards empty of creatures and our board full of zombies that we can eat with our own commander. Lord Dreg, we've already seen. Lord Dreg can make us these 1/1 insect warriors when we get to our end step and a permanent has left our battlefield, or the battlefield, under our control this turn, which of course we're going to be doing basically every turn with our commander. Next from Avatar is Phoenix Fleet Airship. This is really fun in this. For 2 and double black, we get a 4/4 vehicle with flying and crew 1. Easy to crew with basically anything we have. I guess we have some 0 mana or 0 power tokens, maybe? Maybe we do? Yeah. Anyway, it says at the beginning of our end step, if we sacrificed a permanent this turn, it has to be sacrificed, not just killed or left the battlefield, then we create a token that's a copy of Phoenix Fleet Airship. So we play this, and it's not fodder. But at our end step, assuming we sacrifice something when we attack with our commander, we'll make a copy of it, and that is fodder, if we want it to be. But if we go to the next turn's end step, if we've sacrificed something else, then the original airship and the token copy will both make a copy of themselves. Now we've got 4 airships. Any of our little tokens, basically any of our tokens, can crew these airships. We can use them as great 4/4 flying blockers. That's all excellent. And as long as we control 8 or more permanents named Phoenix Fleet Airship, this vehicle is an artifact creature. So it doesn't need to be crewed anymore to become an artifact creature. As long as we spend a couple of turns sacrificing other things, Phoenix Fleet Airship will become a fleet. We'll have 8 of these 4/4 flyers. That's like getting us suddenly a whole bunch of angels into play, or dragons, or demons, whatever you want to think of it as. And now we can swing in with a lot more stuff. Now, if some of them die and we drop below 8 or more of them, in play, they all stop being artifact creatures until we crew them again, of course, and just go back to being regular vehicles. But as long as we can sacrifice something, we make a whole lot of copies of them. Pretty good. We've seen the Earth King. Earth King is here to make Bosco. Bosco is a dispensable token, so yeah, we can sacrifice that. Giant Inheritance is next. I think this is really cool in this deck. Maybe not everyone will want this, but I think this is really sweet. For 4 and a green, which is expensive, we get an aura that enchants a creature. I'm thinking about putting this on our commander. It gives that creature +5/+5, making our commander a 12/10? Or no, a 12/8? It's huge. 12/8? Am I right? Am I losing my mind? No, 12/10. I was right. I got there. Anyway, makes it a 12/10 that says whenever this creature attacks, or this Giant Inheritance gives it, whenever this creature attacks, create a monster roll token attached to up to 1 target attacking creature. A monster roll is an aura, a roll aura that, like it says here, gives the enchanted creature +1/+1 and trample. Meaning Giant Inheritance overall, if we wanted to put that monster roll token on the same creature this is enchanting, so like our commander, it's giving a total of +6/+6 and trample, making our commander a 13/11 trampler. That's enormous. It does not have to put that monster roll on this creature, however. It can put it on any other creature that's attacking. The reason that's relevant is because roll tokens, the special rule about them is, if a creature ever gets more than 1 roll, you have to sacrifice all but one of them. All but, I believe, the most recent one. Not that that's relevant, because the only one we have in this deck is the monster roll from this card. But the idea being, if we've got our commander out, and we've got 5 mana, we can make our commander into a 13/11 trampler right away, and then next turn we attack with them, we'll put that monster roll on something else. Now it has +1/+1 and trample, and we keep putting it on other things. If we have to put it on the same commander, that's fine, because what's especially nice is this. Let's say we attack with our commander and it already has a monster roll on it. We stack the triggers so that our commander's ability resolves first, and we eat that monster roll token. We've sacrificed it. Then, Giant Inheritance's trigger resolves and we put a new one on it. So this permits us to attack with our commander, gives us the ability to sacrifice that little token and still get the benefit of that token by just putting a new one on it. Seems great. Or if we've spread it out amongst our other creatures, we can sacrifice them tokens from those creatures, whatever we may need. So Giant Inheritance really gives us nice, repeatable sacrifice fodder, and if we need to, we can sacrifice Giant Inheritance itself because it works the same as Rancor. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we return it to our hand. So not quite as good as Rancor in that way, because Rancor only costs a single green, so it's easy to recast. This is a big mana investment. But it's also giving us quite a lot of value, and repeatable value, in terms of making fodder for us that we can sacrifice without having to sacrifice it over and over the way we do with Rancor. So yeah, I think this is pretty sweet in this deck. Next is Scion of Calamity. We've already seen it. We've also seen Shredder, Shadow Master. Both of them one of them has Myriad, the other one has sort of like Myriad, so making us more tokens to sacrifice. Speaking of which, we have Tendershoot Dryad. This is 4 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad with Ascend. Ascend means while we have an Ascend permanent in play, and we at any point have 10 or more permanents, including that permanent, doesn't even say non-token, we gain the City's Blessing, and we have it for the rest of the game, even if we drop below 10 permanents, even if we lose our Ascend permanent, doesn't matter, the City's Blessing is just a status we get for the rest of the game. And at the beginning of each upkeep, we make a 1/1 green Sapperling creature token. Our Brightcat Badger loves this card. It does sort of an imitation of it, because it's each upkeep, not just ours. And once we have the City's Blessing, Sapperlings we control get +2/+2 for as long as we have the City's Blessing, which remember, once we get it, we have it for the rest of the game, even if we lose the Dryad. So the Dryad makes us sacrifice fodder every upkeep, and is going to easily get us to the point where we have 10 or more permanents, so then suddenly, as long as the Dryad's in play, all of our Sapperlings are 3/3s. Pretty great. We've seen Michelangelo on the scene. Exists as sacrifice fodder because once it dies, we can put it back in our hand. Old One Eye, sort of similarly, we can sacrifice the 5/5 Tyranid token that it makes, but also Old One Eye itself, and we can then, at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, discard 2 cards to put Old One Eye back in our hand. Beledros Witherbloom makes us those pesty tokens every upkeep, just like the Tendershoot Dryad makes our Sapperlings every upkeep. Now we have Blood Money. This is the one Wrath we're running in the deck. This is 5 and double black for a sorcery that destroys all creatures, and for each non-token creature destroyed this way, we make a tapped treasure token. So this is our only Wrath, and it's an expensive one. Not hard for us to get up to 7 mana, but we don't really want to run too many Wraths in this deck because we are a creatures deck. We're going to have a bunch of different token creatures and tokens of other sorts, but Blood Money makes more of them for us. It doesn't count the number of non-token creatures we control that were destroyed this way, it counts all the non-token creatures on everyone's playmat. And we make tapped treasure tokens. They are tapped, but we can use those to cast our commander again next turn. We weren't probably going to cast our commander again this turn anyway, if we needed to do this at turn 7. But if we've already ramped past that point, then it doesn't matter if we have these treasures, because we can just get our commander back right away. They are inexpensive. So yeah, Blood Money, a pretty nice Wrath that fuels our ability to rebuild, both in the fact that these are treasures that can be tapped for mana, but also that they're sacrificable tokens that we can use and feed to our commander. Just give them a little bit more pay to get them back onto the battlefield. And Spine of Ish-Za. This is another expensive card, but it's really fun in this deck because it's 7 generic mana for an artifact that when it enters, we destroy a permanent. It doesn't say non-land, and I don't love that. At the type of decks that I build, the type of decks I build are meant for pods and of a certain power level. At most of those pods, people don't want to see you blowing up their lands. That's not what people are looking for out of the commander game that they're playing, so I build my decks accordingly. So Spine of Ish-Za, while it can target lands, if your group's okay with it, I mean, I guess go for it and deny someone their mana. But typically there's something that's more relevant for you to destroy. Someone's commander, someone's giant value piece, someone's, door to nothingness. Get rid of something that is a threat to you or something that's preventing you from accomplishing your goals with your deck. And if you need to hit a land, maybe that's a part of it. But generally, yeah, that's not what the tables I'm building for are looking for. But my point is, Spine of Ish-Za can do that. It can destroy anything we need to destroy that isn't indestructible. And when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we put it back in our hand. So we pay 7 mana, destroy the biggest, scariest thing on the battlefield, then sacrifice this to our commander, and it goes right back to our hand, just like Rancor, just like Giant Inheritance. Yeah, we can do it as many times as we need to. It is really backbreaking to see this happen over and over and over. I'm not saying that because it's happened to me, but it's happened to me. So yeah, a pretty solid, repeatable way of removing dangerous threats, or if nothing else, blockers that might stop our commander from swinging in and doing damage to the player that we're attacking. And that is our fodder section. Oh, hey, did you just like the video? Thanks. Nice. I appreciate it. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video if you don't want to. I appreciate you being here and watching either way. In any case, let's keep going. I'm going to talk now about a couple of sections that support our game plan, particularly the ones that we talked about in our deck building template, starting with our card advantage section. So as usual, I have tagged this as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards actually draw us a card, like the draw a card action in Magic. They just give us access to other cards. So Bushwhack is a good example. This is a single green for a sorcery that lets us either Lay of the Land, search our library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, or have one of our creatures fight a creature we don't control. We either find a bush or we whack something. So this is good for us if we are looking for mana and we're willing to trade in Bushwhack to get something. Maybe our opening hand only has 2 lands in it, but it has a Bushwhack, and one of the lands we have is a green source. So we can cast Bushwhack, find our 3rd land, and ensure that we're going to get our commander out by turn 3. Or Bushwhack to have our commander fight something. That's a pretty solid removal effect. I mean, if it's something that would kill our commander as well, maybe not ideal, but maybe it's worth it if the thing we're killing costs so much more to recast, assuming it's a commander, or just wouldn't be recast and we can recast our commander easily. So yeah, good flexibility here as a way to put another card in our hand or remove something. Herd Heirloom is next. 1 and a green for an artifact that taps to make 1 mana of any color that we can only spend on creature spells. So in this deck, usually we're spending this, we're using this for creature spells early on because it's a 2 mana untapped mana rock. That's pretty great. We can use this for our commander. But not as often as in other decks are we continuing to use it for mana, because we can tap it, and until end of turn, a target creature we control with power 4 or greater gains trample and gains curiosity. Whenever it does combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So we can use this to make our commander into a 7/5 trampler, and when they trample over that damage, assuming they do, we get to draw a card off of it. So Herd Heirloom can give us repeatable card draw and repeatable evasion, as well as ramping out our creatures faster if we need to. Just all around good and worth $3.50. You're going to put this in multiple decks. Hunter's Talent is next. I'm very surprised with all the flexibility this has that this is not going for more. I guess it's because it's an uncommon. For 1 and a green, we get a class enchantment. The way this works is it comes in and it does this first, and then at sorcery speed, we can pay 1 and a green to level it up to level 2, and it gains this text. Then once it's level 2, at sorcery speed, same turn or another turn, we can pay 3 and a green and level it up to level 3, and now it has all the text unlocked. So when it first comes in, it enters, and a target creature we control deals damage equal to its power to target creature we don't control. This is a nice bite effect. Great for our 7 power commander. Then we level it up to level 2, and whenever we attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, making our commander into an 8/5 trampler. Pretty sweet. But it doesn't have to be our commander. It can be any one of our attacking creatures, just one of them though. And at level 3, at the beginning of our end step, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. So repeated card draw simply for having a ferocious creature in play. It does happen during our end step, and it does take us a little bit of mana to get to that point, but really nice, a nice way to ensure that we're going to have plenty of spells to cast next turn. We've seen Ichor Wellspring. It enters or leaves, and we draw a card. So good sacrifice fodder that also replaces itself. Mycosynth Wellspring, same thing. It just replaces itself with basic lands. So it's doing the quote-unquote draw that Bushwhack is doing with its first mode, putting basic lands in our hand. Colossal Majesty is next. 2 and a green for an enchantment that draws us a card at the beginning of our upkeep if we control a creature power 4 or greater. So this is doing the same thing that level 3 of Hunter's Talent is doing, but it's doing it during our upkeep, so even more helpful. Fight Rigging is next. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. Hideaway 5 means when this enters, we get to look at the top five cards of our library and exile one of them face down under fight rigging. Then we put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Then at the beginning of combat on our turn, we get to put a 1/1 counter on a creature we control, and if, when we do that, or once we've done that, we control a creature with power 7 or greater, kind of like what our commander begins as, we can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So what we want to do is cast Fight Rigging, put a really sweet spell, the best spell we can find of those 5, under it, then go to combat, put a counter on anything we want because our commander is already going to meet this requirement. But we might as well put it on our commander. Make our commander into an 8/6. That seems great. And then we get to cast that spell that we put under Fight Rigging. And after that's the case, well, this is not going to happen again. So there's only one spell under it. But this will keep happening, so we can keep making our creatures bigger and doing more damage. Next up is Garruk's Uprising. Love this card. 2 and a green for an enchantment that does 3 things. First, it gives all of our creatures trample. All the time, they've got trample, sounds great. It says when it enters, if we control a creature power 4 or greater, we draw a card. So it replaces itself if we've got a big creature in play. Oftentimes in this deck, we've got so many 3-drops that we want to cast several of them on turn 4 because we want to get our commander out on turn 3. Garruk's Uprising really helps us with that because it will enter and draw us a card thanks to our commander being in play. But what if we can't get our commander in play before Garruk's Uprising? Or maybe we have to recast our commander, or we're casting one of our other big things. Well, whenever a creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we also draw a card. So this is the repeatable version of Garruk's Uprising, or of the card draw of Garruk's Uprising. But we're also it's probably going to replace itself when it comes in this deck, and it also gives all of our creatures trample. This is doing a lot of work for us for 3 mana. And also beautiful Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales art. We've seen Pippin. Pippin lets us sacrifice 3 foods to draw a card. Elegy Acolyte lets us draw a card and lose a life whenever one or more of our creatures do combat damage to a player. Lord Dreg lets us pay 3 and a green and sacrifice a token to draw a card. Bebop and Rocksteady both have cycling abilities, which let us discard this to put a different card in our hand. Moldervine Reclamation is next. This is 3, a green, and a black, or a black and green, I should say, for an enchantment that says whenever a creature we control dies, we gain a life and draw a card. So all of those tokens that we were making before, that we're sacrificing to our commander, every time we do that, we're gaining life and we're drawing cards. Sweet. That's all it has to be. And we have Thickest in the Thicket next. This is 3 and double green for an enchantment that when it enters, we put X +1/+1 counters on a creature, where X is that creature's power. If we choose our commander is now a 14/12, and that's large. I don't know what to say, it's just big. It's probably the biggest thing on the battlefield, which is good because at the beginning of our end step, we draw 2 cards if we control the creature with the greatest power or tied for the greatest power. So we want to make something huge. We want to get swole. Our commander is thick in several ways. They are pretty thick-headed. So yeah, this helps us get a really big commander. Hopefully we've got a little bit of trample from some other effect, but even if not, we're going to be able to go to our end step and draw 2 cards every turn, and that's pretty awesome. So that is our card advantage section. Let's talk now about acceleration, which again I've just shorthanded as ramp. Soul Ring, obviously we're running Soul Ring. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. We've got some big expensive creatures in this deck. Our commander is not one of them, but Soul Ring can help us pay for the commander tax at least once, or pay out anything else. This is just the most efficient mana rock you can be running, so run it. Utopia Sprawl is next. This is a single green for an aura that enchants a forest. It doesn't have to be a basic forest, but we have to put it on one of our forests somehow. And when it enters, we choose a color. We will choose green. I'm sorry, we'll choose black, since this is on a forest. I guess we can choose either one, depending on what our needs are, but usually we want to have this fix our mana. Since it says whenever the enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. So if we put this on a basic forest, it now taps for a green and a black, or double green if we choose green. I'm going to choose black. You do what you like. Wild Growth is next. This is a single green for an aura that enchants a land, and it says whenever that enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional green. So the difference between this and Utopia Sprawl is Utopia Sprawl can make any color of mana. We just have to choose it when it comes in, and then it always makes an extra mana of that color. but it has to enchant a forest. Well, Wild Growth always makes green mana, but can enchant any land. So the idea behind this is we put Utopia Sprawl on one of our forests and choose black, and it makes black additionally. We put Wild Growth on one of our swamps, and it will make green additionally. Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, we're running Arcane Signet. This is a 2-mana untapped rock that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, which means in this deck, black or green. It's a 2-mana untapped rock that gives us the colors we need. Yeah, we're running it. Farseek is next. 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Obviously, we don't have any mountains, islands, or plains, but we do have some swamps. So we can find any of our basic swamps, or any of our dual lands, cards that are both swamps and forests. Farseek will grab it, put it into play tapped, and we're all set for next turn to tap for more black or more green mana with it. So this is our rampant growth for the deck. Pretty good. Probably we're going to find our bicycle land. That's the card that is a dual typed land that comes into play tapped anyway, but we don't have to. We've seen Herd Heirloom. Herd Heirloom can tap for 1 mana of any color for 2 mana itself, but only for creature spells. Chittering Dispatcher makes Eldrazi spawn tokens whenever it leaves the battlefield, or when one of its myriad token copies does. Heaped Harvest lets us rampant growth both when it enters and when we sacrifice it. Then we have Journey to Eternity. This is another aura. 1, a black and a green for a legendary aura that enchants a creature we control, and it says when the enchanted creature dies, we return it to the battlefield under our control, and then return this card to the battlefield transformed under our control. It will come in untapped, which is relevant, but nice to say, this is 3 mana we can put on our commander, and if our commander dies, well, our commander will just come right back, and we get Journey to Eternity transformed. We can also put this on a different creature, and then sacrifice that creature to our commander to trigger Journey to Eternity, bringing that creature back, and getting ourselves Atzal, Cave of Eternity, which is a legendary land that taps for 1 mana of any color, but also lets us pay 3 a black and a green and tap it to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So this is a repeatable way for us to reanimate our creatures, in addition to being protection for a creature, because if it's exiled, that's too bad. If it dies, we get to bring it right back. So we want to try and find a way to make it die so that we get a little bit of acceleration by turning this aura into a land that taps for mana. So we want to put this on our commander if it looks like our commander is going to die from being blocked or having to attack into some death touchers or just be destroyed with something that's not an exile effect. And if not, we put this on a different creature and then sack that creature to our commander when our commander attacks. Get that creature right back, maybe get some more enters triggers, but definitely get Atzal into play, and we're all set. We've seen Ninja Pizza. It lets us make food during our second main phase, and it makes all of our food work the same way as treasures. Tireless Provisioner, whenever we have a land come in, makes us a food or a treasure. Topiary Stomper comes in and lets us rampant growth. Next we have Binding the Old Gods. This is one of my favorite cards in Magic. 2, a black and a green for a saga. The sagas work like this. When they first come in, and at the start of our first main phase, we put a lore counter on them, and we get to get the effect of the chapter based on the number of lore counters we have on it. And then once the last chapter's ability has resolved, we sacrifice the saga. So Binding the Old Gods says, when it first comes in, we destroy a non-land permanent that an opponent controls. Seems fine. Totally good. I mean, yeah, that's all we have to do. 4 mana and we get to blow up basically anything. I love it. Then we can search our library for a forest, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. It does not say basic forest, again, so we can find our bicycle land or our tango land, any of our dual lands. That's what we're looking for. And if we let it get to chapter 3, all of our creatures gain death touch until end of turn, and that is totally solid. But it is worth also noting that we could just have this come in, blow something up, attack with our commander, and sack something. It's fine. Maybe get in because we blew up a blocker. Then the next turn, at the start of our first main phase, we'll find a forest card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, and then we can attack with our commander and sacrifice Binding the Old Gods. Maybe we don't even need to get to turn 3 and get Death Touch. We can just use Binding the Old Gods as our sacrifice fodder for that turn. I didn't put this in the fodder section because you might want to give Death Touch to your commander. If you do, Great. Death Touch sometimes. Maybe not in this deck, but maybe so in this deck, depending on if we've ended up with a situation where we have a lot of creatures in play. It can be like pseudo evasion, because in Commander, players have so many life points. They've got 40 life, and they've got to spend mana on their creatures, which means they're investing resources in playing creatures that they don't want to lose. So if our creatures are attacking in with Death Touch, what's the likelihood that they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to throw away my creatures that I spent my time and mana on, versus, oh, I've got plenty of life, I'll just take the damage. So now you're tapped down and I can attack back later. Maybe that's what's going to happen, which means we've snuck in with some damage. And if we're doing that with our commander, it's commander damage. But if our opponents know what our game plan is, they may not go for that, which gives us a good reason after we get our second chapter ability to just sack Binding the Old Gods as whatever we're sacrificing that turn to our commander in order to attack in. Either way. Brightcat Badger lets us tap our Fungus and Saprolings for green, and it makes Saprolings for us, so that's a little acceleration there. The Earth King lets us Rampant Growth for each ferocious creature we attack with whenever we do attack with them. Ferocious, again, being power 4 or greater. Groundchuck and Dirtbag makes all of our lands tap for an extra green mana. Beledros Witherbloom doesn't really ramp us traditionally, but does give us the ability to untap all of our lands once each turn for only the small cost of 10 life. And Blood Money makes a bunch of tapped treasure tokens. Treasure tokens can be a good source of acceleration. So yeah, that covers our acceleration section. Let's go now to our interaction section, which as usual I've just tagged as removal. So Bushwhack's second mode, as we've seen, lets us have one of our creatures fight a creature we don't control. Hunter's Talent's first level lets us do a Rabid Bite effect, and that seems like pretty good interaction. Tear Asunder is next. This is 1 and a green for an instant that we can kick for 1 and a black, meaning if we want, we can pay 2 a black and a green total, and we've cast it kicked. Then it says exile target artifact or enchantment, but if it was kicked, instead, exile target non-land permanent. So this is just a better naturalize, because it exiles rather than destroying an artifact or an enchantment if we cast it for 1 and a green. But if we cast it kicked, we get to get rid of basically anything that we need to, and it's gone forever. Solid. Chomping Changeling, as we've seen, naturalizes something when it comes in, destroying an artifact or an enchantment. Novel Nunchaku is 2 and a green for an equipment that equips for 3, and it says when it enters, we attach it to target creature we control. When we do, equipped creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls, and our equipped creature gets +1/+1 and trample. So if we play the Nunchaku, we put it on our commander is going to become an 8/6 and fight something. If we choose something that's not going to die from that, or that's not going to kill our commander in the process, great. Now we've got an 8/6 trampler that we can attack with. Now, it does have damage marked on it, but that's the whole point of our fight effects. We're getting rid of things because we have such big creatures with big stats. Maybe we don't want to attack that very turn, but we sure could if we need to. Or we could do this post-combat if our commander was able to sneak in without being blocked and it doesn't have any damage marked on it. Next, we've seen the Tainted Treats. It destroys an artifact or creature on its own, and if that thing was mana value 4 or less, we make a food. Binding the Old Gods, we also already saw. It blows up a non-land permanent an opponent controls, which is the same cost as a kicked Tear Asunder, although Tear Asunder does exile instead. Invasion of Innistrad, we can flash it in, and when we do, target creature and opponent controls, we get -13, -13 until end of turn. We have not seen Rise of the Witch King yet. This is 2, a black and a green, for a sorcery that makes each player sacrifice a creature of their choice. So not ideal for us, we can't target with it. And it does affect us as well. Luckily, we've got plenty of sacrifice fodder in our deck. However, if we sacrifice a creature this way, and we will, we can return another permanent from our graveyard to the battlefield. It doesn't have to be a creature, but it sure can be. So this is nice recursion for us in the process of making our opponents sack creatures. Scion of Calamity, as we've already seen, when it does combat damage to a player, destroys an artifact or an enchantment that player controls. We've got a bunch of naturalized effects in this deck. Dark Withering is next. This is pretty cool. This is 4 and double black, but not really. It's an instant that destroys a non-black creature. So it's sort of a Doomblade. But it has madness for a single black. Meaning, if we discard it into exile. And when we do, we can cast it for its madness cost or put it in our graveyard. The purpose of this in our deck is to be discarded to our commander. We attack with Bebop and Rocksteady, discard Dark Withering rather than sacrificing anything. When we discard it, we discard it into exile because of madness, and just pay a black and blow up something that would have blocked us. It can't be a black creature, but it can be anything that's not black. The scariest thing on the battlefield that's non-black is going away for a single black, and we didn't have to sacrifice anything to our commander to attack. I think Dark Withering is pretty sweet in this deck. And we've seen the Spine of his Saw. It can blow up any permanent when it comes in, and when we sack it, or otherwise it goes to the graveyard, we get to put it back in our hand. And that is our removal section, our interaction section. We are only running one Wrath. We've already seen Blood Money, but it's pretty good for us. We can, not with too much difficulty, get up to 7 mana so that we can destroy all creatures. Usually we're not going to want to in this deck, that's why we're only running one Wrath. But at least it gives us treasures to rebuild with and to sacrifice to our commander once we get our commander back in play when we cast it. So that is our section for Wraths and all of our vegetables, all of our support cards. We have a few categories that supplement our game plan, and we're going to start with our Payoffs. Payoffs are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway, starting with Vat of Rebirth. This is a single black mana for an artifact that says whenever another artifact or creature we control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we put an oil counter on this artifact. Oil counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by the Vat of Rebirth. And it says for 2 and a black, we can tap and remove 4 oil counters from this artifact to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield at sorcery speed. So this is great. We're going to be putting at least 1 counter on Vat of Rebirth every turn, probably, with our commander, sacrificing our creatures and our artifacts. We might be sacrificing other things, but for the most part, it's creatures and artifacts. We can also get counters on this when our stuff sacrifices itself. For example, if we tap a food and sacrifice it in order to gain life, or if we sack a treasure for mana, Vat of Rebirth is still going to see those things go to the graveyard and get oil counters on it. And if we really need to, Vat of Rebirth is only a single black mana, and we can sacrifice this to our commander if we need to. But it's pretty easy to get oil counters on this, and a lot of them. So being able to just spend 3 mana and tap it and take off 4 oil counters, we might be able to get a creature back every turn for just 3 mana. That's pretty solid. We have seen Herd Heirloom. It gives us a payoff because it cares about us having power 4 or greater. We got a lot of that in our deck. Hunter's Talent also gives us that same payoff by letting us draw a card, as does Colossal Majesty. Fight Rigging cares about us having power 7 or greater on one of our creatures, which our commander just does. We have not yet seen the rocket-powered Goblin Glider, obviously from the Spider-Man set. This is 3 generic mana for an artifact equipment that equips for 2, and it says when it enters, if it was cast from our graveyard, we attach it to target creature we control, and it gives equipped creature +2/+0, flying, and haste. And it has Mayhem for 2 generic mana. Mayhem means if we discard this, we can cast it for its Mayhem cost. Regular timing rules still apply, but we only have to cast it for just that Mayhem cost. So it's sort of like a fixed madness, if you want to think of it that way. So what we do is, rather than cast this for 3, just like with our removal spell with madness that we saw earlier, we go to combat and discard rocket-powered Goblin Glider to our commander. It'll be discarded. After combat, we'll be able to cast it for its Mayhem cost, and we can put it on our commander. It'll auto-attach to it. We don't have to even spend the equip. So it's sort of like we paid the equip cost and got it for free, because it's the same cost here. Then our commander is now +2/+0 and has flying, which we can use next turn. Pretty good. So we've seen the Crypt Collar Chariot. It pays us off because every time we discard 1 or more cards, which we might do even for things that don't have Mayhem or Madness, but we don't have to, giving us tokens that we can use later. Elegy Acolyte cares about us doing damage to our opponent, obviously, but more importantly, it cares about us having our non-land permanents leave the battlefield, which rewards us with a 2/2 robot token. Lord Dreg also cares about our permanents leaving the battlefield, rewarding us with a 1/1 flying insect warrior. Phoenix Fleet Airship also cares about if our permanents left the battlefield, but only if we sacrificed them. Because if we did, at our end step, we make a token copy of the airship. The Earth King cares about our creature's power 4 or greater, rewarding us with a rampant growth effect for each one when they attack. Mazarek cares about us sacrificing our permanents and puts a 1/1 counter on all our creatures when we do. Moldavine Reclamation cares about our creatures dying. It's going to happen a lot, and it rewards us with cards and life. Thickest in the Thicket rewards us for having the biggest creature in play, which we are pretty likely to have if we've used Thickest in the Thicket to make our commander enormous, or if we just have Galta in play. And Galta is rewarding us by making himself cheaper, or I'm sorry, herself cheaper. I think Galta's a her. Galta is cheaper if we have a lot of power on the battlefield, and we're going to. So those are our payoffs. Let's talk now about our pump section, which is right here. These are ways to make our creatures bigger. Rancor, of course, probably going to go on our commander, but it can go on anything since we can always get it back. Gives +2/+2 and trample to the enchanted creature. Hunter's Talent gives +1/+0 and trample to an attacking creature when we attack if we've got it at level 2. Fight Rigging puts a counter on one of our creatures at the start of combat, every one of our combats. Novel Nunchaku, of course, gives +1/+0 and trample to the equipped creature. Rocket-powered Goblin Glider gives +2/+0, flying and haste to the equipped creature. Giant Inheritance makes the equipped creature, or the enchanted creature, have +5/+5, but also can put monster roll tokens on any one of our attacking creatures, including the enchanted creature, which is an additional +1/+1, and of course trample. Mazarek makes our whole board bigger by putting counters on everything when we sacrifice something. Thickest in the Thicket lets us make one creature bigger by putting counters on it equal to that creature's power. Thunderfoot Baloth adds +2/+2 to every creature, including itself, as long as we control our commander, plus giving everything trample. And Leatherhead puts 2 counters on all of our creatures whenever she attacks. And that is our pump section. Let's talk now about the ways we can be evasive. Because our commander sure is missing that, so we need a few ways to do it. And we've seen all of these. Herd Heirloom can give trample to a creature power 4 or greater, and also give it curiosity. Hunter's Talent can give trample to one of our attackers, as well as +1/+0. Garruk's Uprising makes all of our stuff have trample. Novel Nunchaku gives trample to the equipped creature. Rocket-powered Goblin Glider gives flying to the equipped creature. Bebop makes our rhinos have menace, so it's not all of our creatures, but it is our commander, and Rocksteady. Rocksteady makes our creatures unable to be blocked by more than one creature. It's not real evasion, but it does combo very well with Bebop, and at least it makes it so it's less likely that our commander is going to be trading in combat, because our opponent would have to sacrifice something that has a power of 5 or more in order to kill our commander, because they can't multi-block with Rocksteady in play. So are they going to throw away their biggest, most powerful creatures, or are they just going to let our commander through? Might be evasive, but really it's here because it combos with Bebop. Giant Inheritance, of course, gives trample in the form of a monster roll to whatever we decide to give a monster roll to. Old One Eye gives all of our creatures trample, and so does Thunderfoot Baloth as long as we have our commander in play. So that is our evasion section. Let's talk now about our recursion. We've got these 8 cards that can bring themselves or other cards back into play. Rancor, when it goes to a graveyard, we put it back in our hand. Same is true of Giant Inheritance. When Michelangelo goes to the graveyard, also comes back to our hand. All of these work the same way. Vat of Rebirth, we've already seen, can let us reanimate creatures by just spending 2 and a black and removing 4 oil counters from it. Bloodghast brings itself back to the battlefield every time we play a land. Journey to Eternity will bring the enchanted creature back into play once that creature dies, but also becomes Otskull and lets us pay 3 a black and a green and tap it to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. That ends up being 1 more mana than we normally want to pay. Like normally 5 is sort of the going rate, and we're paying 5 here plus tapping Otskull, but still being able to do it repeatedly is pretty great. And Rise of the Witch King lets us sack one of our creatures and bring another permanent back to play. An Old One Eye, if we at the start of our pre-combat main phase discard 2 cards, can put itself back into our hand from the graveyard. So that's our recursion section. We have a couple of sacrifice outlets. There are more listed in the considering section on this Moxfield page, but we just saw Rise of the Witch King. It gives us a way to sacrifice one of our creatures that's not just our commander, as does Lord Dreg, giving us a way to sacrifice a token in order to draw a card. So if we need a sacrifice outlet, we've got that there. Next is our protection section. pretty simple. We've already seen the Spear Breaker Behemoth. It lets us pay a single generic mana to make one of our power 5 or greater creatures indestructible until end of turn. And we're also running the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots are 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives that equipped creature hexproof and haste. Hexproof on our commander is pretty solid. Being able to know that our commander is not going to get interacted with in a way that isn't like an edict or a board wipe is very strong for us. So yeah, haste can be nice too. Maybe we play this on turn 2, turn 3, our commander comes out for 3 mana and we can't equip the Swifties. Yeah, usually the Swifties don't let our commander take a lot of advantage of haste, at least the first time we cast our commander during the game. But if we have to reanimate our commander or just recast them from the command zone, Swiftfoot Boots can let us attack in with them right away, and that's pretty solid. So that is our protection section. I want to mention that we have this section of tokens. We're not going to go through all of these because we've already gone through all of them at least once. All of these tokens are also tagged, or tokens cards are also tagged as fodder cards because every token we make is some kind of fodder. So it's worth looking at this section to see what things produce tokens if you're interested to look at that, even if the tokens are, copies of themselves or actual little token creatures or myriad copies of themselves, everything like that. The only thing in this token section is non-creature tokens. I don't include those in my token sections because you want to be able to look at this section and see how else do I produce creatures in this deck. That's what the token section is for. So yeah, that is the token section. Feel free to peruse. And that is all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We are running, obviously, the TMNT lands, and we are more heavily green than we are black. This is not a perfect balance, but it's more than enough. I just like to put a little bit more on, I wanted to put a little bit more in the way of swamps than we need to in order to make it perfectly proportioned, simply because we do need black in our deck. And so the likelihood of needing it early on is, I think that counterbalances the fact that if we were going to run this proportionally, we might be running 14 or 15 forests and 5 or 6 swamps. I think I like to err toward a little bit more of a even balance. It tends to do well for me in my deck building. So, Festering Thicket is our bicycle land. This is, like I mentioned earlier in the video, a swamp forest. It's a dual-typed land, meaning it inherently taps for black or green. It comes in tapped, or we can cycle it for 2, meaning we can pay 2, discard it from our hand, and draw a card. Something we might do later on in the game if we've got plenty of mana production, or if we just really need a card. Being able to have the option to discard this and get something else, get whatever we happen to draw off the top, is pretty solid. Usually, however, I fetch this with one of our cards that can fetch a swamp or forest, like Farseek, or our individual Bebop and Rocksteady, the ones that can swamp cycle and forest cycle. I fetch this because since those are going to be able to, or particularly Farseek, brings that land into play, tapped, Festering Thicket is the only land that is dual typed in this deck that is inherently going to come in tapped, so we might as well do that. If you want to upgrade this, you do lose out on the cycling ability, but you could upgrade to Overgrown Tomb, which is a shock land. It's a lot more expensive, but it's also pretty powerful. So yeah, worth doing. Woodland Cemetery is next. This is a check land. It's a land that taps for black or green, and it comes in tapped unless we control a swamp or a forest. So in this deck, we have 20 basic lands, a bicycle land, and a tango land. So that's 22 cards in our deck. That's 22%. That's almost 2/9 of the deck are lands that will make Woodland Cemetery come in untapped. I usually think that as long as you've got about 18 to 20 typed lands with basic types, check lands are worth running, is because they're so inexpensive compared to what I would upgrade this to, which is probably a slow land. Deathcap Glade is the slow land version of this. Slow lands are coming back into standard, starting with Secrets of Strixhaven, so maybe their prices will drop. But I think that if that's the case, I would put one of those and Woodland Cemetery in here, because again, it's so cheap and it does its job in this deck quite well. We're running both filter lands that we're able to run. Viridescent Bog is a land that comes in untapped, and taps for a black and a green, but we have to pay a mana into it to tap it at all. It can be any mana, it's generic of course. So we are tapping 2 mana sources, whatever we're paying this for, and the bog itself, to make 2 mana. So yeah, fixes our mana, pretty good. Twilight Mire, a lot better though. It can tap for colorless mana on its own, without having to put anything into it. And if we put a black or a green into it and tap it, we can make a double black, double green, or one of each. Pretty good. Almost entirely better than the Viridescent Bog, except Viridescent Bog can make colored mana if we only have colorless mana. Twilight Mire requires colored mana in order to make colored mana. So both are good, both have their uses in this deck, so we're going to run both because both are pretty inexpensive as well. Here are the 4 fixing lands we're running in this deck. I'm going to talk about Command Tower first. This is an untapped land with the same text as Arcane Signet. It makes 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So it makes black or it makes green. It's an untapped duel. Of course we're going to run that. We would run this if it were a tapped duel. For example, Path of Ancestry. It is a land that comes in tapped and has that same text as Command Tower. However, if we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So obviously, our commander shares creature types with itself. And then every other card we have in the deck that shares types with it is also a mutant. So every mutant in the deck is either a mutant and a boar, or a mutant and a rhino. So those are 5 cards in our deck other than our commander, plus 1 more in the form of Chomping Changeling, which has Changeling, so it is all of those types. Any of those cards will let us get a scry off of it when we use the Path of Ancestry mana to cast it, as well as every time we cast our commander. So yeah, pretty solid for a tap land in our colors. Blighted Woodland is next. I usually run Myriad Landscape in my decks, but because our commander can come out so early, I wanted a version of Myriad Landscape that comes in untapped. So this is a land that comes in untapped. It taps for colorless. We can pay 3 and a green, tap and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So this gives us a double Rampant Growth for the cost of, 2 Rampant Growths and sacking the Blighted Woodland. 4 mana that is. So while this is a little bit of a slow version of Ramp, it does turn 1 land drop that we can tap immediately into 2 lands in play. So it does accelerate us a little bit, and that's pretty nice. We just can't do it early on. Similarly, Temple of the False God comes in untapped and taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. This is a soul land. We just can't activate it unless we control 5 or more lands, which means 4 lands plus the temple itself. So if we make this as our turn 5 land drop, and we've got 4 other lands, we would jump from 4 mana to 6 mana, and that's pretty good. Obviously, if your opening hand is a swamp or a demolition field or something, and Temple of the False God, and so just those 2 lands, probably you want to mulligan this. But even though not everyone likes this land, I really think that it's powerful. It just doesn't help you early game, but that's not the only time the game exists. Next, we have Llanowar Wastes. This is a pain land. It is a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can tap it for black or green if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. Totally worth it. Basically, the idea with this is you always tap it for colorless mana unless you really need colored mana. And what it means to really need colored mana is the idea that you wouldn't be able to cast the spell you want to cast if you didn't tap it for colored mana. Which means it's like you're paying a life to get an extra mana, to get a discount on your spell in a way. The difference between casting a spell and not casting it, if it's 1 point of life, it's worth tapping it this way. And if it's not the difference between casting or not casting, then we just tap it for colorless. No big deal. Good either way. If you wanted to upgrade the Pain land, I might suggest Darkboar Pathway. I really like the pathways. It's not a dual land, but it is a modal double-faced land, so it can come in as an untapped black source or a green source. I would probably run both if you're going to put a pathway in here, but yeah, Llanowar Waste's pretty solid. Necroblossom Snarl is next. This is a land that taps for black or green, and as it enters, we can reveal a swamp or forest from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. So this is not all that unlikely to come in untapped, because we have so many cards that are swamps or forests. We've got 20 basic lands, plus those 2 dual types, and it's quite inexpensive for what it's doing. If you wanted to upgrade this, I might say Wastewood Verge. It's another checky type land, but it does come in untapped no matter what. It just doesn't necessarily produce both types of mana that it can produce, both black and green, unless you have a swamp or a forest in play. But again, it's being played in standard right now, so very not inexpensive. It's expensive. It's more than I want to pay for a single land if you're buying singles, at least for this kind of deck. Next we have Temple of Malady. This is a scry land. It's a land that comes in tapped, scries when it does, and it taps for black or green. Pretty good. Tapped dual land. It gives us a little bit of value when it comes in beyond just being a tapped dual. If you want to upgrade this to the Surveil land, which is Underground Mortuary, also much more expensive, but totally doable if you've got it already in your collection, or if you just want to start buying lands to make your decks more powerful. Lands are always a good investment. And here's our Tango land. It's Vernal Fen. This is a swamp forest, of course. It's dual type, so it taps for both colors, and it comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Does not matter what kind of basics they are. It could be 2 swamps, 2 forests, or 1 of each. When the Fen comes in, we might have it come in as an untapped dual. That's pretty great. And just like the Bicycle land, if you want to upgrade this to a Shock land, to Underground, or Overgrown Tomb rather, that would be totally fine. Finally, we have these 6 utility lands we're running. Bonder's Enclave is a land that comes in untapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap it to draw a card if we have a creature with power 4 or greater. That's pretty good. Rewarding us for our ferocious theme, yeah, by letting us draw cards, especially when we really need one. I mean, it's spending 4 mana, essentially, 3 plus tapping the Enclave itself. But if we're running out of gas and we've got big creatures, we might as well refuel this way. It's not a bad way to do it. Demolition Field. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Spinavish Saw that the decks I build, the pods that people play these kinds of decks at, aren't looking for land destruction. But you do have to have, it's fine to have at least one answer for a problematic non-basic, like Rogue's Passage in someone's Voltron deck. If they're attacking unblockably, you want to stop them from doing that. Or I have a friend that plays Glacial Chasm, so in our combat deck, we want to be able to have a way to actually do damage to our opponent and not have that prevented. Demolition Field is the answer to that. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. But wait, that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land, but we've gotten rid of the problem that they've caused by running that non-basic for us. Whatever would have stopped us from achieving our goals, or maybe accelerated their goals a little bit too much. That's what interaction in Magic is, and we're not denying them mana, because assuming they still had a basic in their library, and we did too, both of us get those basics into play untapped right away. So yeah, Demolition Field, most agreeable, fair way of dealing with problematic lands. Mosswort Bridge is next. This is a hideaway land. It's a land that comes in tapped, taps for green when it's untapped, but when it enters, we hide away 4, just like we would hide away 5 with our fight rigging. So we look at the top 4, exile 1 face down under the bridge, and then put it on put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Then, whenever we have a total power of 10 or greater among the creatures we control, we can tap this, or we can pay a green and tap the bridge to play the exiled card. So we put, again, whatever we find that's best of those 4, a sweet spell under there, we get our creatures into play, our commander gets us 70% of the way there already, and then we spend 2 mana, a green and tapping the bridge, and we get to cast whatever the coolest thing we found of those 4 is. We can also do this at instant speed. That's the same way that it works with the with fight rigging, but fight rigging's ability to use it is tied to its beginning of combat trigger. Mosswort Bridge, if we've got, I don't know, Ground Chuck and Dirtbag under it, and we've got enough power, we can surprise our opponents when they attack into us by activating the bridge and casting our 8/8 for free out from under it, and we've got a surprise blocker. That also doubles up all of our mana. Sweet. Restless Cottage is next. I put this in because it does help us in our game plan, but it's also just really cool, and what incredible art. I love Jesper's art for just all of Magic, really. This is a tap land that taps for black or green. or we can pay 2 a black and a green and make it into a 4/4 black and green horror creature until end of turn that is still a land, because we can still tap it for mana if we want to. And then, when it attacks, we make a food token and exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. So we get to just do a little bit of graveyard hate, eat things out of graveyards. It doesn't really matter if an opponent is, hurt by that or not, because what this is doing is making us a food and giving us a ferocious creature that can trigger some of our other effects. That food, of course, being good for us to feed to our commander. Rogue's Passage, I mentioned a little bit ago about, this being a problematic land, particularly so when our commander has a 7 power, which means we only have to hit each opponent 3 times with our commander to just kill them with commander damage. So Rogue's Passage comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap to make a creature unblockable this turn. Kind of expensive, but a very powerful effect that can really do work in our deck with our big creatures like Galta, or with our commander by making it so not only can they not be blocked, so we're definitely pushing damage, but also they're protected because they can't be blocked. So they're going to have to be removed in a different way or interacted with. We can also use Rogue's Passage politically. We can say, hey, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B, but they've got really good blocks. I'm willing to activate my Rogue's Passage to make your creature unblockable, and then you could swing in. And they'll say, great, go ahead and do it. And we'll say, no. You have to attack with the creature first, because if I go ahead and activate Rogue's Passage before you attack, you could choose to attack me, and that creature's still not blockable. And they would say, oh yeah, that's fair. I'll go to combat and I'll attack with my big commander. And we'll say, great, before blocks, we're going to activate Rogue's Passage, make your creature unblockable, and then, great, we've made a good deal that hurts one of our opponents, while also creating some goodwill with a different opponent, and hopefully making a deal, because we say like, hey, we'll help you attack your other opponent as long as you leave me alone for a turn cycle or 2, something like that. You make a little deal. But it's also fun to just make someone else's creature unblockable when they don't expect it. Say opponent B is attacking opponent C, and we are like, oh wow, opponent C is totally dead if they don't block, but of course they're going to block. So we just make one of opponent B's creatures unblockable. Now opponent C can't block, and we use our Rogue's Passage to turn one of our opponent's attacks into killing a different opponent for us. Which is to say, we used opponent B's resources and our Rogue's Passage to kill opponent C. Pretty great. Also hilarious at the table when it happens. Finally, we're running the Shire. This is a legendary land that comes in tapped unless we control a legendary creature, which means if we get this into play after our commander, great. It's an untapped land that taps for green. And then we could pay 1 and a green, tap it, and tap an untapped creature we control to create a food token. This is essentially, if you ignore this tap an untapped creature you control, then this is just the Gilded Goose effect. So the Shire, for essentially tapping 1 more mana, which is to say the Shire itself, we turn any creature into a Gilded Goose. Laying an egg, making a food, great. Lets us make more tokens that we can sack to our commander, and that's all we need. And that sums it up. Starting next time, I'm going to be releasing new Secrets of Strixhaven commander decks every Thursday until July when the Hobbit set drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or deck style. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider becoming a member of the channel if you want to maybe sometimes see my videos a little early. And remember most of all that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.